Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. In this video, I want to tell you about the story of Norm van Brocklin. He is a quarterback mostly with the Rams, and he spent his last 2 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, and he won a championship with the Eagles. And I wanted to kind of go through his career because when I was a kid, I came across this particular card, which you see here, and I didn't know a whole lot about Norm van Brocklin, and as things may happen, uh, I saw this card and I was like, I really want to find out more about Norm van Brocklin. Where do I start? And so, when I first started in the hobby, uh, uh, the vintage hobby that is, there wasn't really anywhere that I could go to find out a little bit more about these players and especially the cards. And so I was really fascinated about the cards, and particularly Bowman, because all I really kind of knew about was Tops and Flair and Don Russ. So Bowman was really kind of interesting, and that kind of led me down a weird path, if you will, of being a writer. And so just doing the research and who Warren Bowman was and his business and the cards themselves and the players. And so Norman Van Brocklin really kind of uh, played a huge role in my willingness or my desire to find out more about him and the cards themselves. So this is Norman Van Brocklin's rookie, the 51 Bowman, and I grabbed this at a live auction at Hall's, and there is two little print streaks here. You guys probably can see those, but for me and my purposes, that was fine. It was just the fact that I really wanted the card. It is a really nice card too. It's probably one of my favorites in the set, although the artwork in the 50, 51, 52 Bowman are just amazing anyway. The artists are really great. And so I'll show you the back of this card just in case you guys have not seen one. If there's anybody who is new to vintage and they want to track one down. Unfortunately, my camera hates vintage cards. What can I say? I don't, off the top of my head, remember exactly what I paid for this. I think it was fairly cheap at the time. Although when I was first getting into vintage, stuff was a lot cheaper and more affordable. Anyway, the second Norm Van Brocklin card that I picked up is his 52 Bowman Large, and I did pay $50 for this. No, $40. I paid 40 for it, and there's a few things that are not really desirable, I guess, with this particular card. Um, First, it's the number one card in the set, so it's going to have issues right off the bat for the most part. This one has a little bit of water stain on it, and you can tell on the back too, right there, that it does. But for $40, I was okay with that. It was just the fact that I wanted the card, I acquired the card, and I was very happy. I still am, and I might at some point want to grab the small instead, but the artwork is really fantastic, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Norm van Brocklin in this video, because to tell you the truth, I really haven't seen a whole lot on him in videos. So I do have another two Norm van Brocklins in this video here. One I haven't gotten yet is the 55 Bowman, but the other is the 56 Tops, and I somehow missed this card, and I saw that Chris from Stories and Cardboard had one, and when he was doing his video on the 56 Top set, which is, by the way, Top's first set of football cards that they released, so it's kind of an important set. Beautiful colors on these cards. They're very affordable. If you are looking to get into vintage football, I would recommend that you get into the mid to late 1950s. The 1955 Bowman are really great. They're not expensive either, and the 56 tops are not expensive. So if you're really wanting to get into vintage football, you might want to start with the mid to late 1950s and early 60s. It can be a little dicey after that. The Philadelphia and the Flair from the early 60s, they can be kind of expensive. The one thing that you want to keep an eye out on for this card specifically are the print streaks and the centering, and then also print dots as well, print bubbles, which are notorious with these particular cards. This one has like two. They're yellow, so you can't really get away from that. But again, this is a card that I really wanted after I saw it, and I think it may have been the first time that I saw it. Was the first time on his channel. So anyway, Norm van Brocklin's a really interesting player. He served in the Navy during World War II from 1943 to 1945, and he came back from the war, and he first ended up as a NFL player in 1949 with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are kind of interesting too because they used to be the Cleveland Rams. And I'll talk a little bit more about the Cleveland Rams, especially in 1945 when they won the championship. And so he was with the LA Rams. I believe the LA Rams or the Cleveland Rams moved in about 1946, 1947 to Los Angeles. And so he was with them from 49 to 1957, and then with the Philadelphia Eagles from 1958 to 1960. And he was the coach, the head coach of the Vikings from 1961 to 1966, and the Atlanta Falcons from 1968 to 1974. He was a two-time NFL champion in 1951 and again in 1960. He was also the 1960 NFL MVP and a 1960 first team All Pro, a three-time second team All Pro in 1952, 1954, and 1955, and a nine-time Pro Bowler between 1950 and 1955, and again in 1958 to 1960. 1960 is a real big year for him, but he doesn't have any cards. He doesn't have an individual card though for a lot of the 1950s or late 50s through like 1960. Uh, anyway, so he's also the 1954 NFL passing yards leader, 1952 completion percentage leader, and the 1950s All-Decade Team. And he also received the 1960 Burt Bell Award too. So I'm going to get into two of these articles that I read about him and his career, and I think you guys are going to find it very interesting as I did. Here we go. This is from the Akron Beacon Journal, May 4th, 1983. Above all else, Van Brocklin was a winner by Tom Melody. Camp Poole, the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams 30 years ago, once said, "The Dutchman will break every passing record in the book if somebody doesn't break his neck first." This prediction, which seemed to be sound at the time, proved to be soundly incorrect. The Dutchman, Norm van Brocklin, did not break every passing record in the book, and for some reason nobody ever broke his neck. Nevertheless, he was a splendid professional quarterback for 12 years, good enough to ascend to the Hall of Fame, and along the way he became one of the most memorable critters in sports. A grump of the highest order, forever his own man, occasionally his own worst enemy as well. He died the other day of a heart attack at age 57. Yes, of a heart attack of all things. During his playing days, there were those who would have sworn no such thing would ever happen to Norm van Brocklin, a hateful sport who could not tolerate the shortcomings of others. That's a horrible way to live your life. I'm sorry, but anyway, let's continue with this. Once during his 9 seasons with the Rams, he threw a cupful of water in the face of a lineman who had allowed him to be sacked. The lineman blinked, shrugged, walked away. Such were the powers of Norm van Brocklin over others. Not subtle. And once during his days of coaching either the Minnesota Vikings or the Atlanta Falcons, he said, "I find it hard to walk up to a player and tell him he did a heck of a job." This attitude drove him from both jobs, but those close to him said he mellowed during his last years, and when he died, he was the owner of a pecan farm in Georgia. Norm van Brocklin. His ticket to success was punched by an equally colorful fellow, former Canton McKinley High and University of Akron coach Jimmy Akin. When Jimmy Akin became the head coach of Oregon in 1946, he said the school would abandon the single wing, switch to the T formation. "Anybody here know how to pass?" Jimmy Akin asked. A couple of Van Brocklin's buddies pointed toward him, and Jimmy Akin had himself a passer. That, after he examined Norm van Brocklin's stubby fingers with considerable skepticism, and after he'd been close enough to those fingers to suggest his prospective quarterback to do something about his cigarette habit. Thus, as they say in the movies, a legend was born. And by the way, while we were dropping names, the Los Angeles general manager who traded him to Philadelphia was Pete Rozelle. Not often was Norm van Brocklin inclined to shelter his feelings. "What are you going to do after you retire, Norm?" "I'm going to be an idiot just like you guys, you sports reporters." "What do you think of your new teammates in Philadelphia, Norm?" "We got a bunch of deadbeats." "What do you think about the players your Minnesota team got in the expansion draft, Norm?" "We just paid $500,000 for a bunch of stiffs." "How about college coaching, Norm?" "That's for idiots. Put your career in the hands of a bunch of 18-year-old kids." "How about all those fights you threatened to have with players from other teams, Norm?" "I might have a hot head, but it's not empty." So life went for Norm van Brocklin, probably the most accurate long passer ever created. He won the National Football League championship for Philadelphia in 1960, expected to be the team's head coach the following season. When the Eagles suggested that he become a player coach, he walked away to become Minnesota's first head coach. From time to time, players charged he was cruel, unfeeling, impossible, and, it was said, he once stared down at his quarterback, Fran Tarkenton, dazed and flattened on the sideline, and commented, "Welcome to the NFL." Never, though, did anybody accuse him of not wanting to win, of not being a winner, of not being one of the best of all professional quarterbacks. This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer, May 3rd, 1983. Van Brocklin, dead at 57, led Eagles to NFL championship in 1960 by Joe Logan. Norm van Brocklin, 57, the volatile Dutchman who quarterbacked the Eagles to their last National Football League championship in 1960, died in his sleep yesterday after suffering a heart attack. The Hall of Famer who also led the Los Angeles Rams to an NFL championship and who coached the Minnesota Vikings and Atlanta Falcons showed no signs of life when an ambulance arrived at his 70-acre pecan farm in the tiny Atlanta suburb of Social Circle, Georgia. He was pronounced dead at 1:05 a.m. on arrival at the Walton County Hospital emergency room in nearby Monroe, Georgia. Van Brocklin, the NFL's leading passer 3 times, and the man many called the greatest quarterback in Eagles history, died very quickly, according to Dr. Jeffrey Konauer, the county medical examiner who performed an autopsy. Twice in 1979, Van Brocklin had undergone brain surgery, once to relieve an oxygen shortage and again a week later to correct complications caused by the first operation. Van Brocklin, also nicknamed Stormin' Norman, was indeed a stormy figure in a career that began in 1949 and ended in 1974. He played 9 years with the Los Angeles Rams and 3 with the Eagles, and coached a total of 13 seasons with the expansion Vikings and the Falcons. Quote, "He was just a fierce competitor," said longtime associate Marion Campbell, now head coach of the Eagles. "He was a no-nonsense guy." Van Brocklin's last job in football was as an assistant coach at Georgia Tech under Pepper Rogers in 1979, working with running backs. "Not many people made the impact he did," Rogers said. "You could never say that Norm was a dull or plastic. He created excitement." Rogers recalled how Van Brocklin, a star in college and the NFL, and never was an assistant to anyone, readily plunged into his duties at Tech. He loved football so much and wanted to be back in it so much that he took a job as an assistant at Georgia Tech. "I just thought it was great." In his last years, Van Brocklin's public image changed from fiery to friendly, and he tended his pecan farm in social circle and talked football on Ted Turner's WTBS Superstation. He had been in ill health and had brain surgery twice in '79. Monday, former associates remembered him as a fierce competitor on the field. He didn't care about the feelings when he went to work, but after work he was jovial. He could relax and put the charm on. Tommy McDonald, Van Brocklin's favorite receiver on the 1960 championship team, agreed. "I wish people could have known the guy better," he said. "He was really a super guy. He was hard to get to know, but he was a super person." Others would testify that Van Brocklin was hard to get to know. Anecdotes abound. There was his very bitter and very public feud with Fran Tarkenton in Minnesota. There was his chilly attitude towards his players in Atlanta when they struck the preseason camp in 1974. There was this contempt of virtually anyone who did not toe his line. When it came to sports writers, it was even worse. There was the time a writer asked him after the Falcons' 2-5 start in 1974 if he was still a fighter. "Let's stack the chairs," roared Van Brocklin. "If you're man enough, I'll show you just how much of a fighter I am." But there was also a softer side. After a neighbor died, Van Brocklin quietly went about the task of finishing painting the neighbor's house. When another neighbor and his wife were killed in an auto accident about 10 years ago, Van Brocklin adopted their 3 children. Other than doing commentary on Ted Turner's WTBS cable TV superstation, Van Brocklin's only contact with football since he was fired by the Falcons on November 5, 1974, came during the 1978 and '79 seasons when he helped Pepper Rogers at Georgia Tech as a coach of running backs. In contrast to his legendary confrontations with players, fans, and sports writers, Van Brocklin's later years were peaceful in social circle, 40 miles east of Atlanta, where he walked among his pecans, pastures, and 2 lakes. After the Falcons job, he had returned there to wait for a phone call about another head coaching job, a call that evidently never came. One restaurant, no barber shop, so small there was no fast food place, so small Velveeta cheese just made it recently into the bill of fare at the restaurant. Oh my God, is the way he described Social Circle 2 years ago when the Daily News did a retrospective piece on the Eagles championship team of 1960, Van Brocklin's final season as a player. In the championship game that year, Van Brocklin rallied the team for a 17-13 come-from-behind victory over the Green Bay Packers in the late Vince Lombardi's first appearance in a title game. Van Brocklin was a premier passer, to be sure. After serving in the Navy during World War II, the South Dakota native went on to become a 1948 All-America quarterback at the University of Oregon, where he had enrolled under the GI Bill. After completing requirements for a degree in education in 3 years, he went back to Los Angeles Rams as a fourth-round draft choice rather than play his final year of college eligibility, platooning with fellow Hall of Fame member Bob Waterfield, who died a month ago, and I'll get to him in another video. Van Brocklin led the NFL in passing in 2 of his first 4 years with the Rams, and he threw for a professional record that still stands, 554 yards in a game against the New York Yanks in 1951. During his career, he connected on 1,553 of 2,895 passes, a 53.6% completion rate for 23,611 yards and 173 touchdowns against 178 interceptions 3 times in 1950, 52, and 1954. He led the NFL in passing, and twice he led the league in punting. I get it. Sometimes that you want to win so badly that you just kind of forget about the feelings of others and kind of like say what you want to say, even though it might hurt you professionally or personally. And sometimes we just kind of forget that our words have a meaning behind them and impact. And sometimes we just don't know what that impact is till much later. So is Norm van Brocklin here. I don't know if I'd have a cup of coffee with this guy, let alone a beer. But he is one of the better known quarterbacks of the 1950s, and he's someone that I really haven't heard a whole lot about in the hobby in regards to his career, which is why I wanted to share it with you today. Um, I really do like his career, and I like his cards specifically. And there was I wanted to kind of get to this card again here because it is his rookie. And the one thing that you want to keep in mind if you are trying to grab his rookie card is that the 1951 Bowman, actually, a lot of the early Bowman cards have some specific issues that you're going to want to keep an eye out for, and one of them is print streaks. So this card does have a few print streaks in it, although I didn't pay a whole lot for it when I snagged it as I think it was in my 20s when I grabbed this. But the other thing too is registration can be a problem with this card too, and I'll talk more on a video about registration and what it is and how to spot it. It's when the plates don't really match up on the printing press where you get double images. But I'm going to go into that in greater detail in another video. The other thing too that you want to keep in mind is really kind of on the back here. This one is fine, but a lot of these cards have gum stains, and I've heard that these stains on the back of the card will lower the value or the grade of the card. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct. I don't think they should really apply too much to the grade because in a lot of cases, these cards came in 1 cent packs, and the chewing gum inside, well, it would stain most cards. Usually you find the staining on the back, not on the front of the card, but that's something you want to keep in mind. Uh, for me personally, if I'm collecting Bowmans, I don't really care about the gum stain on the back of the card. Sometimes I'm just kind of lucky to actually have a copy of the card, and sometimes I may be able to upgrade the card depending on who the player is and how expensive it is. But for the most part, I really enjoy uh, his cards and the Bowmans from like 1950 through 1952. There is something also with this card too, and I'm wondering maybe if you guys would know anything about this. So in about 2006 or so, there was a huge find in the Midwest of maybe 20 or 30 sets of 1951 and 52 Bowmans, and they were like near mint, and I don't know what happened to that find. I heard about it, I read about it at the time, but now I can't find anything about this particular find, the Midwest find, as I think that they called it. in 2006 or so. So if you guys know anything about this, let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. And I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about Norm van Brocklin. And if you have any favorite cards, I'd love to hear about your cards too. So, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate this. I really wanted to talk about Norm van Brocklin and his career today and his cards. And I really, I really love collecting this stuff, as you guys can tell. I love to hear about the stories of these guys. I never got to see anyone play, obviously, because I was not born yet. But um, there are championships that you can see on YouTube of a lot of these players from the 1940s and 50s, and you can kind of see what is going on with them at the time, kind of like a glimpse, really, because um, to me, my mind, I don't think that there's a whole lot of people that are still alive that would have gone to some of his games, uh, his early games, at least in the early 1950s, maybe 1960. But now we're looking at like what 54 years, so it's getting up there. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it as always, and I will talk to you in another video. Have a good one. Bye.